set it up for me so that I didn't have to worry about the mic or the tables or any of that. And I want to thank Paul for doing that for me too. You know, this talk is really important to me in terms of I really want people to get it. So please let me know somewhere if I'm not being clear, because I think it's so important to know. Basically important because I think all of us are afraid right now. And I think we need to understand that and understand how each of us processes that fear and what we're doing, whether we're processing it with anger or processing it with activism or processing it by ignoring it. I mean, we just need to look at, we need to keep our minds calm. The talk originally was, I really wanted to say, it's important to know that there's a lot of reactions that we have that are unconscious and out of our control, and that we share that with mammals. So this one, I found these pictures, I just was thrilled, because I'm really going to be talking about your infancy, and I'm talking about animals, because evolution is right here in front of us in this picture. Both of them, I believe, are showing surprise and interest and curiosity, and those are very important things that we need to develop in ourselves very much. So next, and I'm using cheat sheets up here with pen. So the first thing that I wanted to say was this statement is that below every thought that you have, between every action that you have, with every value that you hold, there's an instinctual feeling. If you can begin to discover what the feeling is that's motivating your thoughts, motivating your actions, motivating your value system, it will help you know yourself a lot better, and also help you forgive yourself and perhaps your neighbors. Next. Okay. Now this feeling is instinctual. I said that I think before. It's instinctual, but it's beyond your control, and that mammals have the very same feelings. Those of you, probably most of you, who've had pets, most of them are going to be mammal pets. You probably know that already, even though the scientists did not know it for years, that they have the same feelings. So next. I can't. I'm sorry.
Which feelings are aroused depend on the stimulus.
Okay, thanks, ma'am. I'm sorry, I said it again.
Which feelings are aroused depend on the stimulus and life's early beginnings.
Okay, so the point here I'm trying to make is that the feelings, instinctual feelings, emotional feelings that you feel are universal, but they are definitely affected by what you learned as an infant and as a child, that they have become imprinted in your brain, and you might respond with anger or you might respond with fear. It'll be different for each person depending on the way they were treated as children. Okay, the next one. And I know this, I remember this slide. It's actually, when I started talking about this or thinking about it, one of the trouble I had was, is surprise a feeling, or is surprise an event, a stimulus? And somehow it's mixed up, it's conflated in our English language, maybe in all languages, but definitely, because if you say to someone, when you were surprised, what did you feel? They can tell you, but they say words like this: dumbfounded, or flabbergasted, or speechless, or stunned, or shocked, stopped dead in my tracks. All of these words are describing the physical event that happens to your body when you have been surprised. So I started thinking, surprise is actually an event. It's a stimulus. And two of the researchers that I like very much say prediction error. Now, frankly, I don't like that, but I like Mark Solms very much and what he says. But prediction error sounds so techie, it's a little too much for me. But Stephen Porges, who talks about the vagal, which I'm going to be talking quite a bit about, he calls it a violation of expectancy. And the violation of expectancy is what happens to us at least 3 times a day, maybe more. But certainly that happens to us all the time. And it immediately changes us when it happens. So as I go through and I keep talking about violation of expectancy, I want you to think of surprise as a violation of expectancy. Alan Shore, another one that I am using in his talk, just says the unexpected event, but it's the same thing. When you are not expecting something to happen, something happens, and you have a certain reflex reaction. Okay, and I use this picture, because we all know the reflex of you put your finger in a baby's hand, it'll grab it. And that's of course from evolution, because apes carry their babies on their backs, apes have lots of hair on their backs, and babies were able to stay hanging on to the mother's back. So there's a reflex that all babies have. But we also have a reflex that does that. And I don't know the advantage to this at all. I cannot. What is the advantage to that in long life? But it's nevertheless. And when we blink, and we blink about 3 times every second, we're blinking to protect our eyes. When we gag, we're gagging to keep us from dying. So all these reflexes are automatic. You can't control them, and they come about to protect you. So when I get to talking about the polyvagal theory that Stephen Porges talks about, he talks about every violation that you come across of your expectancy for 200 milliseconds, you're going to drop into what he calls the dorsal vagal. And by the way, it's the vagal nerve coming out of the brainstem. Dorsal means back. Dick remembers it because there's a dorsal fin when you're fishing. Anyway, I think there's something else. I know the imperative biological value system I think it's on this chart.
No, not yet.
It's not yet on that chart? Let me say it anyway. So the biological imperative value for all of us and all living creatures is it's good to live and propagate. It's bad to die and fail in your job propagating. So that's a biological that all of us have, and the reflex is the strongest indication of that. Okay. I'm sorry, is that the reflex?
Surprise.
Perceived.
What is it again?
Surprise, response to a perceived threat.
Okay. I think that's in a way, it's a reputation, isn't it? But surprise is the response to perceived threat, and that's just the body. You may, the example I give is kind of a silly one. There's no perceived threat, but the body brain doesn't know that. So let's say that you bought 3 apples yesterday, put them in the refrigerator, and now today you want an apple, you go to the refrigerator and there are no apples in there. That's a violation of expectancy. It's not perceived threat. However, your body brain reacts to the violation, perceived threat. Immediately, in 200 milliseconds, you drop into the dorsal vagal, ancient vagal that we share with reptiles, and then you're out of it in 200 more milliseconds. Is there anything else on there I should say?
No.
Okay, go on. So. I think
Response
this is a
to
question.
surprise?
Yeah. What is your response to surprise? Think about it. Do you realize that you either jerk or maybe you have control of your body, you don't jerk, but you have, I'm very easily startled, and I'll go like that. You can see it happen to me. And other people are quieter, but you still have that. But you also have an emotional response. And the emotional response could be laughter, or it could be stunned with something that's really beautiful, or it could be rage. And that's what we're seeing a lot of now, is people not getting what they expect and feeling rage. And all of this is that the body brain perceives threat. So there's a basic fear element that we all feel. So I can change it, unless I've left something out.
Response to reflex?
What do
Response to reflex, context?
I'm using this as confusing me, so I'm not gonna use it anymore. The response to reflex is this: no matter what, when you have a violation, you move in that 200 milliseconds, I think I've said that, to the dorsal vagal. You drop in that, and that drop really feels like you've dropped. But the other thing that happens, and this is very, very important, I think there's a seat right here, over here. Yeah, maybe. Okay. That you get a rush of endogenous opioids. And we all know that opioids feel good, and that's why some people get addicted to it. Opioids we have that are generated in our own body. They're there to help us survive. They're there to help us do the more important things of being social with each other, but they're also there that if we're dying, it staunches our blood, and it sort of calms us down, it numbs us down. So opioids are both positive, in the positive way of helping us live, and in the negative way. And those endogenous opioids are in the baby that's born, but they are also in every one of our pets. Okay. Next.
Evolution.
Oh, thank you. Evolution is in this talk primarily because there's conservation, and they use the word conservation simply to say we've conserved this. And the one that I think is probably most interesting to me right now, not about this talk so much, but just is that fish originally had 2 fins, then they got 4 fins. Once they got 4 fins, they had 4 limbs. Once that happened, then the evolution gave them the opportunity to move onto land. So all of us have 4 limbs. They're used in different ways, and they evolved, and they changed, and they adapted. And then there's another word, exaptation, that Stephen Jay Gould came up with years ago, that says, oh, it's the same thing, but it's used for a different purpose. The one that I remember was that dinosaurs got a little bitty fur on them, but that fur finally changed into feathers, and dinosaurs became birds, etc. But this talk is more about the evolution of this dorsal vagal drop and the ventral vagal, both of them very necessary to our well-being and to the feelings that we generate all of our thoughts. I think that's everything. Oh, and now, this is one of my favorite slides, because it reminds me of when I was a kid, and Pam made this for me so that you could really see it. But when I was a kid, we all knew that a minute was 60 seconds long. And the way you could count it was 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. I imagine others of you knew that too when you were a kid. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. And I checked this out scientifically at my microwave. Count it, 60. You have to talk fast. You get 60 into a minute. So what I'm talking about though is milliseconds, thousands, thousands of a second that this is all happening in our bodies and our brains. So what I wanted you to see, that's how you have to say it. So you get down to 200 milliseconds and you can't even say one. And it's over. So sometimes I'm talking about 400 to 600 milliseconds, so it's 1 minute. So what I'm just trying to say is, what I'm describing that I want you to feel in your own body is so fast, it come and go and you don't even get it. So this, I'm going to go back to this, I'm going to be going one, every 200 milliseconds. Okay, thanks. And now I'm going to the autonomic nervous system. I don't know if you remember me studying this in high school or in college, but the autonomic nervous system, basically, the role of that whole system is to keep us alive. And I remember learning only fight, flight, and freeze. That was what you were going to learn in the autonomic nervous system. But it's way more complicated than that. And when I first learned it, the parasympathetic was the side where everything slowed down. You'd go into it when you were asleep. Cell walls would repair, all things would be repaired, and you get up the next day and you'd be able to go into sympathetic with a rush and feeling pretty good. But also that you could slow down so much that it was freezing or immobilizing, and you could go into sympathetic nervous system and you're in fight or flight. So that's what I learned. But there's so much more in that both sides not only are trying to take care of you, but they're working on what mammals, dogs, camels, and humans, all of us need to be cared for. And the caring for comes from the opioids that come with the dorsal vagal and come with the ventral vagal, the opioids that make things feel good when we're in relationship with someone. And so you need to know both of those things. You have to have both of them seamlessly working together. They're not they used to teach that they were agonistic. They're not. They're seamlessly working together. Okay, we'll change it. And then here's a chart, comes from a polyvagal informed therapist that made this. But what she's showing is the vagal nerve coming out of the brainstem. The ancient one is the back one, the dorsal. The newer one is in the ventral. And the newer one helps with socialization, and reptiles don't socialize much, but we, the mammals, do. And you can see the progression between the two. However, the important thing is the ventral vagal, the one that mammals are really using, all that nerve endings are controlling what Stephen Porges says: sucking, swallowing, breathing, and vocalizing. All of that is controlled by the ventral vagal. And of course, this is very simplified. There are many other things happening as well. But that's part of that. And then the dorsal vagal, the old ancient vagal that all the reptiles have, takes care of the gut level part of your body and so forth, but it also handles propagation and that kind of thing as well, because ancient reptiles did propagate. So you see that split there, and when I'm talking about it, I'm going to be talking about both. It gets confusing. Let me know if you have any problem with it when I'm explaining. Okay, return it.
You want to talk about the ancient functions?
Pardon?
The ancient functions,
Ancient functions?
urinating, defecating.
Oh, yeah, well, that's what we all do. But I mean, yes, okay. And, let me just say that, thank you, okay. one of the things you have to do in the dorsal vagal, which is the ancient one, you cannot defecate. You cannot urinate. And this is the interesting one. You can't meditate. And the worst one is you can't have an orgasm unless you are willing to surrender to the body and the brain to let go. And that's in the dorsal vagal. That's very ancient. And that's in all of us. And so I've had, once in a while in my life, clients say to me, well, I can't go to the bathroom in a public bathroom. I can't relax. I don't feel safe. So I can't let go. That kind of thing. And as long as you know that, I always thought it was kind of very interesting to think, because I thought, defecate and urinate, you don't really connect with meditation. And I think that the same thing, however, is true, because meditating, I have many clients who cannot meditate because it requires a lot of trust to just let go and let your mind go and let it go wherever it wants to go. That's very difficult. Okay, is it, we got it? Okay. And
Wait, let's go the other way.
They went the wrong way?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
okay. Tell me what it is.
Violation and expectancy prediction error. ANS shifts the body. Roly-polies?
Okay, thank you. That's roly-poly. That's my hand. That's what I'm talking about. I think this is so interesting because when I first started reading this, and I'm just thinking about humans, and then I'm thinking about mammals, but I didn't think about roly-polies. But I realized finally the roly-polies. Those of you who lived in New Mexico, at least, I think, know what a roly-poly is. But when we were kids, we'd lift up a rock, and a roly-poly would, a little insect or a little bug would just roll up and wait to die. It has a dorsal vagal. It rolls up and dies. Well, what we have within us is the scary story of going into dorsal vagal when we perceive threat. Every time. Does this include Livingston?
No, this is
No.
Robert Sapolsky.
Pardon?
Robert Sapolsky, you already talked.
Oh, Roberts spoke. I don't know how many of you know that name, but he is a researcher on stress at Stanford, and he wrote a book 30 or 40 years ago called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And in that book, he pointed out about zebras, when they notice something and they're afraid, they don't control it at all. They run and they defecate and get rid of everything they can, so they weigh a little bit less. It's an old great book. I don't know what else.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Is that it? Okay. All right. So here's another chart from the Stephen Porges book, again pointing out the various parasympathetic, sympathetic traits. I'm just going to let you read it because I can't read it. But you will see. Okay. Go on to the next.
Okay, this is Livingston.
Livingston.
Okay, now, here's a part that I really like. David Livingston, and I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember Dr. Livingston, I presume. That part, that Livingston, at one point, was attacked by a lion. The lion had him in his mouth by his shoulder, and he shook him. He wrote home to his mom and dad later, and we have that letter apparently. And he said, I had the strangest experience. I was like a mouse in a cat's mouth when it just goes dead, and then the cat puts it down and the mouse runs away. He said, I was like that, in that I had no fear. I had no pain. I just had a thought. I wonder which part of me the lion will eat first. So I know that was very interesting to me, and I didn't know much about this now. I didn't know anything about the endogenous opioids flooding you when there's danger, when there's threat. But that's what happens. And it's so automatic, it's like 200 milliseconds, and you're there. It's flooded. You're feeling that. And then somebody shot the lion, and he could write the letter home.
Carol.
Pardon?
Carol?
Carol.
Okay, and then a friend of mine named Carol told me that at one point when she was taking care of her father's home while he was on a vacation, she went into the home and found two men in the house robbing her father. They grabbed her and tied her up, and then one of them pointed a gun at her face. Before she passed out, she had a sense of her body leaving through the window and feeling like it's okay. It's okay. So again, she went into the dorsal vagal drop, had that rush of endorphins or endogenous opioids, and accepted it. And fortunately, she woke up a little while later. They were gone, and she was okay. Except that that's a trauma. And we carry that in us forever. And then I think I had
4-year-old drowning.
who else?
Drowning?
Oh, the drowning stories. And I wanted to come. 3 people told me about drowning stories, and they're very interesting because 2 of them were 4 years old and 1 was 9. The 2 that were 4 they were in a lake, and they walked out into the edge and then down, and then there was a plateau and they just went down. And when they went down, they knew enough about death at 4 to kind of know it happens, not really understanding it, but know about it. And they looked up to the sun filtering through the water as they looked up, and they thought, I guess I'm gonna die, but with no fear. Just, again, curious about that. And the man that told me this story, when he was a little boy, he also noticed that he was spiraling. Spiraling is a very common description for people who actually don't die, that I was spiraling, and there was that old term, the death spiral, because people feel that. I don't know if some of you in this room have experienced it, but my guess is you have one of these things. The third drowning story was a 9-year-old who was terrified of water, but the swimming instructor was convinced that he could get her into the deep end of the pool. So he got her over to the ladder, and as she was going down the ladder into the deep, she was so frightened, she fainted there. But what she remembers is that she felt so good, and after they resuscitated her, she felt good. She felt kind of vague and lovely, and again, the endorphins that filled her body were still there after she came to. Those stories I thought were very interesting, okay, in terms of what happens to us. And is this the movie?
It's a baby movie.
No, okay. I want to tell you about the baby movie, and then you get to see it. This is from one of those videos that I used to buy when I'm trying to understand infancy. And this is one about attachment. But the interesting thing about it to me in the terms of the attachment is that these people are filming and they don't even know what they got. They don't know. Because they're describing a mother bringing her baby to a babysitting place. And this is an infant baby, a little baby. The baby is coming, maybe the first time, we don't know, but we also know about babies that they learn about you from facial muscles and the tone of your voice, but they don't know about anybody else. And in this case, you see this baby being given to the babysitter. The babysitter nor the mother know that this baby is now going to be terrified. The body brain is going to move it into dorsal vagal, it's going to drop down, and I want you to watch this. And the filmer and the people who did this didn't even know what happened, but you can see it on the baby's face.
Some of these observations to the bones which we between human adults and their young. Could there be similar pre-programmed patterns of behavior in young children? Bowlby believed that there were. He defined attachment behavior as behavior that makes a person stay closer to some other clearly identified individual, very often, but not always, the mother. He thought that the first few months of life were very important in establishing these attachment relationships. A child who has a strong or positive attachment has a secure base. Relationships raises many questions.
You see the hair on this baby's head lifted up? Yeah. That sound was very good, I'm sorry.
Human adults and their young.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's just, yeah, I'm worried about the other movie. So anyway, you saw that. So that was all, how did I get to level 2?
Paris.
Oh, I'm sorry. Level 2 is collapse. Then I'm calling it levels. What happens to you that makes you go into dorsal vagal? And they're all levels of fear or levels of what the body brain sees as fearful. But I want you to understand, it doesn't matter what the body brain sees. There is that reaction that is fearful to have a violation of expectancy, regardless. But this one is around collapse, and is that right?
Yes.
And I've got
Freeze.
Mark Soames.
okay. Oh, and a story about Mark Soames, my researcher that I like, and one about me. And the one about Mark Soames is this: he, as a young intern in South Africa, was expected to know a lot more than he thought he was supposed to know. And he was in a hospital, and he was in a ward for children with brain damage. And as he walked through, and the doctor leading the group, expecting him to be able to define and diagnose all this, he realized he was out of his, what I'm trying to think, he wasn't able to do it, and he was afraid. But he also had a history of his brother falling off a roof and cracking his head and never being the same. So he had a history, and he's in a ward, and he's going through there, and all of a sudden he begins to get faint. And he says to himself, I'm going to fall, crack my head, and end up in one of these beds. He then said, I felt imminent doom, and then oddly relieved, I passed out. So that was his story, fitting with Livingston's story, living with all these stories that I was hearing. And then I went somewhere for standing quite a long time for an honorarium for Dick. And standing there, I was getting weak. One of my dear friends, daughter-in-law, said, she's getting weak, give her a chair. Somebody pulled me a chair. I sat down in the chair and fainted. But the thing happened was, as I fainted, I had this feeling of, oh, it's okay, let go. So I had all my own personal experience, as well as all these things I was reading. And that was a collapse. And neither Mark Soames nor I were in actual imminent danger. But we still had the reaction because our body-brain goes into it. Your body-brain goes into it daily, and I'm going to show you how it does in a minute, even with the next one.
Rage.
Well, when we get to rage, that's what I think we're talking about most of the time with most of the people in the United States who are unhappy with, well now, all of us, unhappy with something. And, but rage, the reaction of rage comes from what we were trained and taught as children and how we were treated. It doesn't come just automatically, even though the feeling of rage is a universal feeling. It's instinctual. We can't stop it when it comes, and that's one of the things that I don't think I've said, but it's really important about these feelings. You can't stop the feeling from arising. You can stop your behavior around it. You can stop thinking about it, but it arises and it affects how you think, affects how you feel about or act, and it's really important to understand that first feeling you can't have any control over. Okay, next one. At this level, this is the one that's most common for most people. I think it is around shame. Okay,
Shame,
yeah,
yeah.
okay, shame. That when you have that reflexive reaction, let's say you have a violation of expectancy, you have a surprise, you automatically, reflexively go into startled, whatever, stop, speechless. I mean, you may not have any bodily reaction, but you're speechless, something stops. And then you recover 400 milliseconds, and the feeling that you have in that 400 milliseconds is another way of saying flight. You've gone into the sympathetic, you're not into fight from rage, you're into flight. Because when people talk about shame, they always say shame is wanting to hide, wanting to disappear. And you see with children who don't hide it, they hide their face. You can tell a child whenever they're feeling any shame, they hide their face. So the shame is constant. We might have it 3 times a day when things go wrong. Okay, turn to the next. Oh, and here's the next little film. I hope you'll be able to hear it. I wonder if you could bring it up to the mic
Okay.
or something. This, let me tell you about this film. It's really important to me. It's a movie called Sing Sing. It's a true story, but it is a movie. It's not a documentary. About, I think some fellow who wanted to teach acting in the prisons. And he got a group of prisoners who were interested in doing Shakespeare, and they read Shakespeare, and then they put on the Shakespearean play, and wore costumes, did the whole thing for the rest of the inmates. And they found this program helped recidivism rate really greatly, because it went down to 3% from 60% for those who were doing the acting. So the program grew to other prisons. So they made a movie about it, and this one fellow is acting a fellow who's going to the parole board and saying, I did this program and I've been rehabilitated or whatever, and I would like to get out. And this is what he's saying, and then this is what we're showing, and I hope you can hear.
Maybe I should put the microphone over here.
Can I take the microphone?
Can you
No,
move
no,
it up there?
no, I'm gonna move it.
Okay,
Let's see if this works.
okay.
Yeah.
It's been a program that was established to help population with acting skills, and it's turned into something a bit more, wonderful, because it helps people get more in touch with their feelings and able to process as you move through and clearly get some rehabilitation.
So are you acting at all during this interview?
Sorry.
Okay, now this movie, I really recommend you watch it. You can get it. But the fellow is acting like we act when we're stunned, when we're shocked. You know, I look at it from a point of view of being a psychotherapist, and a psychotherapist says, why doesn't that woman know any better to recognize that the fellow is sincere? Why doesn't she know it? What's wrong with her mirror neurons? So that's what, in a few minutes, I'm going to cover mirror neurons, and we'll talk a little bit about it for you. But anyway, I wanted to be sure you got that. And then I thought, I don't know, is it all right to in a few minutes to take a break?
Yeah, I think
Sure.
we have that.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask all of you to cooperate with me and do an exercise with each other, because I want you to have this experience. And I have to tell you that I did this exercise before we do it. I did this exercise with people who knew what I was doing. They knew why I was doing it, and yet they still had the experience. So, and one was with Pam. Pam knew. She's been working on this PowerPoint with me. She knew, and yet when she was talking to a friend of hers about something that she was interested in, because that's usually a cue right there, being interested. When she was interested, her friend looked down at her watch, and when she did, Pam had that whole dorsal vagal and then another dorsal vagal out, in, out, and was able to tell her friend, you know what just happened? I dropped into that drop, that spiraling death drop. I came back out, and this was a friend was able to say, God, I'm sorry, I didn't even know what I was doing. But the fact was that Pam recognized it, could feel it. And then Tara, who was also helping me in this, doing this with me, I said, I'm going to do it to you, Tara, and it's kind of mean because I'm going to ask you to talk about something you're interested in, and then I'm going to look away. And so Tara said, okay. She started telling me something she was interested in. I looked away. She came back. She started laughing. And what that laugh was her, that fourth step, which I believe I forgot to even talk about, so I'm going to go back. She felt it, and then she recognized what she felt. She felt the dorsal vagal drop, and then she felt the feeling, and then the protection or the defense against that feeling. She felt it all in what? One Mississippi, maybe, and all that amount of time. And it was back. So I'm going to ask all of you, I did this with Dick too, Dick, and his reaction was slightly different in that we were leaving a humanist meeting, taking a different route home because we wanted to go to the post office, and when we got to the street, he said, is this a turn? Is this a turn? I said, I don't know. And he turned, and then it was the wrong turn. And so he's turning around and he come back and he's saying, I should have known better, which is a common reaction to shame, a common, like, it's my fault that I felt this shame, and I'm trying to say to all of you, it's automatic. You can't escape it. You go into that, you're going to feel it. And if you can learn to not say, I should have, and recognize, okay, there was a mistake, it can be corrected instantly, repaired, no problem. But that's how we live our lives sometimes, is doing that. So I'm going to ask you to do this exercise where you have to have one other person. So find a partner right now, and then one of you become one, and one of you become two. So will you do that now?
I think we're tired of it. We've all done it. We've done it. You can't shame me. Okay.
So let me, the number one person, I'm going to ask the number one person to say something about themselves that they're interested in, to tell to number two. And then number two person, I'm going to ask you to look away. So,
Okay. All right,
Okay.
so I see you guys. Maybe you are you going on?
Oh, did I just do it? Alright, now we're gonna get number one to look
Okay. Yes.
Quiet!
All right. Now, if it's all right, Pete, then we could take a break. Is that okay? The humanists take a 7.5-minute break. Thank you.
Why 7.5?